I'm Amanda Watson, 29 years old, and I never thought I'd watch my sister Heather transform into someone unrecognizable at our parents' funeral. Mom and Dad's sudden death in that car crash left a void nothing could fill, but Heather seemed more concerned about what they left behind than who they were. As mourners offered condolences, I noticed her scanning the room, calculating. When the reception quieted, she cornered me with dollar signs in her eyes. Before I tell you about the most shocking moment of my sister's entitled life, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for what happened next. Growing up as the younger sister, I idolized Heather. Those early memories of building blanket forts and creating secret languages seemed to belong to different people now. We were inseparable once. She'd hold my hand crossing streets, defend me from playground bullies, and let me borrow her treasured possessions. That closeness was the foundation of what I thought would be a lifelong bond. Our parents, Thomas and Catherine Watson, built their life on love, hard work, and family values. Dad started a hardware store from scratch in our small town, working 16-hour days while Mom managed the books and still made it to every school event. They weren't wealthy initially, but they taught us that happiness came from connections, not possessions. Dad's hearty laugh would fill our modest home, and Mom's famous Sunday dinners brought the extended family together weekly. They showed us what a loving marriage looked like, supporting each other through challenges and celebrating small victories together. The change in Heather began subtly around her 13th birthday. I was 10 and still playing with dolls when she started obsessing over designer labels and popularity. At first, our parents saw it as normal teenage behavior, but something fundamental shifted in her worldview. Where once she'd been content with homemade birthday parties, she now demanded expensive celebrations at trendy venues. Christmas lists transformed from modest requests to itemized demands with specific brands and models. "Why can't I have what Jessica has?" became her constant refrain. Everyone else's parents buy them these things. Our parents, wanting to see her happy and perhaps worried about her fitting in, began giving in more frequently. Small concessions evolved into larger ones. By high school, Heather had mastered the art of manipulation. Tears, silent treatment, and guilt-tripping became her weapons of choice. I watched my sister transform from my protector into someone I barely recognized. When she left for college, the distance between us became more than geographical. She chose an expensive private university while I attended state school on scholarship. Her calls home almost always ended with requests for extra money, for textbooks that mysteriously cost triple the actual price, for school trips that seemed suspiciously recreational, for apartment deposits when she decided dorm life wasn't luxurious enough. After college, Heather married Gregory Parker, an ambitious financial advisor whose appetite for status matched hers perfectly. They became the couple who upgraded their cars annually, vacationed in exotic locations, and somehow always steered conversations toward their latest purchases. Their wedding alone cost more than most people's annual salary, with our parents covering most expenses after Heather's tearful insistence that this is the only wedding I'll ever have. Meanwhile, I became an elementary school teacher, finding fulfillment in helping children grow rather than accumulating possessions. My modest apartment, filled with second-hand furniture and treasured books, became my sanctuary. Dad would sometimes visit and say with pride, "Amanda, you've figured out what really matters." Those words meant everything to me. The pattern of my parents bailing Heather out continued well into adulthood. When she and Gregory bought a house far beyond their means in the most prestigious neighborhood, my parents provided the down payment as a loan that everyone knew would never be repaid. When their luxury SUV needed repairs, somehow the bill found its way to our parents' credit card. Each time, Heather would express effusive gratitude followed by lengthy explanations about temporary financial setbacks that would soon resolve. I tried maintaining our relationship despite our differences. I'd invite her for coffee, send thoughtful birthday gifts, and make efforts to know my niece and nephew, Emma and Jackson. Occasionally, I'd see flashes of the sister I once knew, like when she helped me through a difficult breakup or remembered my favorite author had a new book out. But these moments grew increasingly rare. The last meaningful conversation I had with my parents happened just 2 weeks before the accident. I'd stopped by their house to help Dad with some yard work, and Mom made her famous apple pie. As we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Dad seemed contemplative. "Your mother and I have been doing a lot of thinking lately," he said, his voice uncharacteristically serious. "About the future, about family." Mom reached for his hand. "We've made some decisions that might be difficult, but they're necessary." When I asked what they meant, they exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. "Just know that everything we do is out of love," Mom said, "for both our daughters." I had no idea then that this cryptic conversation would be our last, or how prophetic their words would prove to be. The call came at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. That moment is etched into my memory with terrible clarity, the jarring ring cutting through darkness, the instant knot in my stomach before I even answered, Officer Simmons' careful, gentle voice delivering news that shattered my world. "There's been an accident. Your parents' vehicle. No survivors. We need you to come identify." The words blurred together as I sank to the floor, phone still pressed to my ear. My parents had been returning from their 35th anniversary dinner at their favorite restaurant when a drunk driver crossed the median. They died instantly, together, just as they'd lived. Somehow I managed to call Heather. Her initial wail of grief sounded genuine, but by the end of our brief conversation, she was already asking about funeral costs and whether our parents had updated their will recently. Even in my shocked state, the shift in her priorities wasn't lost on me. The following days passed in a haze of arrangements and paperwork. I took responsibility for planning the funeral while Heather claimed she was too distraught to handle details. Instead, she focused on inquiring about insurance policies and account information, contacting our parents' bank before their bodies were even released from the morgue. "We need to be practical, Amanda," she said when I expressed discomfort. "Someone has to think about these things." Going through my parents' belongings became both torture and comfort. Each item, Dad's reading glasses still perched on his nightstand, Mom's gardening gloves hanging by the back door, triggered fresh waves of grief. Yet among their possessions, I found unexpected treasures, handwritten letters they'd exchanged throughout their marriage, photo albums meticulously organized, and a journal Mom had kept about her daughters. One entry from several years back caught my eye, worried about H. Nothing seems to satisfy her. Money disappears and the requests keep coming. T. And I disagree about how to handle it. He wants to give her what she needs to be happy. I fear we're feeding something unhealthy. Meanwhile, A asks for nothing but gives so much. How did two sisters from the same home become so different? As the funeral approached, tension built between Heather and me. Her calls became more frequent, always circling back to financial matters. "Have you found any important documents? Did they mention specific bequests? Where did they keep their safe deposit key?" My friend Jenna Lawson provided crucial support during this time. She'd known my family for years and saw through Heather's performance of grief. "You don't have to handle her right now," Jenna insisted after witnessing a particularly demanding phone call. "Your only job is to grieve and honor your parents." 3 days before the funeral, we met with Mr. Walter Harrison, my parents' attorney for over 20 years. His downtown office, with its leather-bound books and family photos, felt reassuringly stable when everything else was chaos. He explained that a formal reading of the will would occur the week following the funeral, but assured us that all funeral expenses had been prearranged by our parents. "Your parents were thoughtful planners," he said, his kind eyes moving between Heather and me. "They put considerable thought into their estate matters." Heather leaned forward. "Can you give us any specifics now? Even a general overview?" Mr. Harrison's expression remained neutral. They preferred all details be revealed at the formal reading. "I will honor their wishes." Heather didn't hide her frustration, but couldn't press further without appearing overtly greedy. The morning of the funeral, I woke before dawn, physically ill with grief. How could I say goodbye to the two people who had been my foundation? As I put on the black dress Mom had helped me pick out for a cousin's wedding just months earlier, I caught myself waiting for her call, our tradition before any important event. The silence of my phone was deafening. I drove to the funeral home early to have a private moment before others arrived. Sitting alone with the closed caskets, my parents had specified no viewing. I whispered all the things I wished I'd said more often. Thank you. I love you. I'll try to make you proud. What I didn't know then was that the most painful confrontation wouldn't be saying goodbye to my parents, but facing what my sister had become. The Pleasant Grove Community Church filled quickly with mourners, a testament to how deeply my parents had touched our small town. Dad's hardware store employees came in their uniform shirts, a gesture that would have moved him to tears. Mom's book club, garden society, and former students filled several pews. Neighbors brought casseroles by the dozen. The support should have been comforting, but Heather's performance kept pulling me from genuine grief. She arrived fashionably late with Gregory and their children, dressed in designer black that somehow managed to look more like a fashion statement than mourning attire. Her entrance caused heads to turn, exactly as she'd intended. She embraced me with dramatic sobs that disappeared the moment cameras weren't focused on her. Then she moved through the crowd, accepting condolences with practiced vulnerability, dabbing at dry eyes with monogrammed handkerchiefs. When it came time for eulogies, I spoke from my heart about Dad's unwavering integrity and Mom's boundless compassion. I shared stories of their extraordinary ordinary love, Dad warming Mom's car on winter mornings, Mom leaving notes in his lunchbox for 35 years. My voice broke several times, but I pushed through, wanting to honor them properly. Heather followed with a speech that sounded suspiciously rehearsed, focusing more on how they'd supported her accomplishments than who they were as people. She mentioned their generosity repeatedly, with meaningful glances toward Mr. Harrison in the third row. The reception afterwards was held in the church basement, where tables overflowed with community contributions. I found moments of genuine connection with people sharing memories of my parents, each story a small balm for my raw heart. Mrs. Jenkins recalled how Dad had kept her car running through her husband's long illness, never sending a bill. Mr. Townsend described Mom tutoring his dyslexic son for free until his grades improved. I was speaking with my father's oldest friend when Heather appeared at my elbow, her artificial smile firmly in place. Amanda, I need to speak with you privately, she said, her grip on my arm contradicting her pleasant tone. Family business. She steered me toward the empty Sunday schoolroom before I could protest. Once the door closed behind us, her demeanor transformed entirely. Listen, she began without preamble. We need to discuss the inheritance situation before the official reading. I stared at her, disbelieving. Our parents aren't even in the ground yet, Heather. Which is exactly why we need to settle this now, before things get complicated. She pulled a folded document from her purse. I've had my lawyer draw up a simple agreement. I'm proposing you sign over your portion of the estate to me, and in return, I'll let you keep any sentimental items you want. The audacity stunned me into momentary silence. You can't be serious, I finally managed. I'm absolutely serious. It's the sensible arrangement. Her voice took on a practiced, reasonable tone she'd perfected over years of getting her way. Think about it, Amanda. I have 2 children to put through college. We just upgraded to a larger home with a substantial mortgage. We have country club fees, investment opportunities, appearances to maintain. And I have nothing worth supporting? I asked, finding my voice. Let's be realistic. You live in that tiny apartment, drive a 10-year-old car, and work at a job that will never make you wealthy. Your lifestyle costs a fraction of mine. She smiled as though she'd made an irrefutable point. You don't need the money. I do. That's not how inheritance works, Heather. And it's certainly not what Mom and Dad would want. Her smile hardened. Don't pretend to know what they would want. I was their first child. They always provided for me, always understood my needs were greater. You mean they gave in to your demands to avoid your tantrums? I corrected, surprising myself with my directness. Heather's expression darkened. I've allowed you to play the perfect daughter for years, Amanda, but we both know who Mom and Dad's priority was. Who they invested in. Who they believed in. She thrust the document toward me. Sign it. Unless you want me to contest the will and drag this out for years. I have the resources for good lawyers. Do you? You would put us through a legal battle while we're grieving our parents? The person before me felt like a stranger wearing my sister's face. I'm trying to avoid exactly that by handling this privately. Her tone suggested she was being impossibly generous. This way is cleaner for everyone. The answer is no, Heather. I won't sign anything. She stepped closer, voice dropping to a threatening whisper. You've always been jealous of me. This is your petty revenge, isn't it? Fine. Remember that your niece and nephew will suffer because of your selfishness. When they can't attend the colleges they deserve or have the opportunities they merit, I'll make sure they know exactly who to blame. The door opened suddenly, revealing Jenna, whose expression made it clear she'd heard enough. Everything okay in here? She asked, though her tone indicated she knew it wasn't. Family discussion, Heather snapped. It's over now, I said, moving toward the door. Heather grabbed my arm. Think about my offer, Amanda. It expires after the reading. Let go of her, Jenna said with quiet authority. As we left, I noticed several funeral guests watching with concerned expressions. Heather's raised voice had carried further than she realized. The mask of grieving daughter she'd carefully constructed was slipping, revealing the calculation beneath. I made it through the rest of the reception on autopilot, accepting condolences while avoiding Heather's glares from across the room. As painful as the confrontation had been, it clarified something important. Whatever happened with the will reading, my relationship with my sister had already fundamentally changed, perhaps irrevocably. 5 days after we laid our parents to rest, I arrived at Mr. Harrison's office for the official reading of the will. The walnut-paneled conference room felt too formal, too final, another reminder that my parents were truly gone. I chose a seat farthest from the door, bracing myself for Heather's arrival. She didn't disappoint. At precisely 2 p.m., she swept in with Gregory, both dressed as though attending a business acquisition rather than a family matter. Her confidence was palpable as she nodded curtly to me before taking a seat directly across from Mr. Harrison's position at the head of the table. Amanda, she acknowledged coolly. Heather. Gregory, I returned. Mr. Harrison entered with his assistant, who would serve as witness. He carried a thick leather portfolio that seemed too substantial for a simple will. After expressing condolences once more, he adjusted his reading glasses and began. We are here to execute the last will and testament of Thomas James Watson and Catherine Elizabeth Watson, he began formally. What I am about to read reflects their explicit wishes after much consideration and consultation. The document was updated 6 months ago and is legally binding. Heather straightened, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I noticed her hand squeeze Gregory's knee beneath the table. To begin, Mr. Harrison continued, Mr. and Mrs. Watson have left detailed instructions regarding the distribution of their estate. He glanced at me. They have named Amanda Catherine Watson as executor of their will, with full authority to oversee the implementation of their wishes. The slight widening of Heather's eyes was the first crack in her composure. Being named executor traditionally went to the eldest child, a position she had assumed would be hers. The Watson family home at 247 Maple Street, valued at approximately $425,000, along with all its contents not specifically bequeathed, shall be placed in a family trust. Amanda Watson shall have residential rights should she choose to occupy it, or administrative authority to maintain it as a rental property with proceeds divided according to the trust specifications outlined in Section 12. Mr. Harrison turned a page. The family business, Watson Hardware, including all inventory, property, and accounts receivable, valued at approximately $1.2 million, shall be transferred to the ownership of Watson Family Trust, with specific management provisions outlined in Addendum A. As he continued outlining various smaller bequests to relatives, charities, and longtime employees, Heather's expression grew increasingly perplexed. The major assets were being placed in trusts rather than distributed outright, not what she had expected. Then came the bombshell. Regarding liquid assets, including savings, investments, and insurance policies totaling approximately $870,000, Mr. Harrison paused significantly. The deceased have provided specific instructions along with this documented ledger. He withdrew a leather-bound accounting book. This contains a complete record of all financial assistance provided to Heather Watson Parker between the years 2010 and 2023, totaling $328,745, with itemized entries including dates, amounts, and purposes. He slid a photocopied summary across the table. These amounts were designated by Thomas and Catherine Watson as advances against Heather's inheritance, with signed acknowledgement forms for each transaction. Heather's face drained of color as she scanned the detailed list. Cash gifts for her wedding, the house down payment, car loans, credit card bailouts, vacation funds, all meticulously documented with her own signature on each entry. "That's not possible," she whispered. "Those were gifts." Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. "I have copies of the signed agreements for each transaction, explicitly stating these were advances against future inheritance. Your signatures appear on all documents." Gregory snatched the papers, his financial advisor's eyes narrowing as he processed the implications. "This can't be legal. They never mentioned repayment during their lifetimes." "They weren't required to," Mr. Harrison explained. "Advance inheritance is a common estate planning tool. The deceased chose not to request repayment while living, but documented their intention that these amounts be reconciled upon distribution of the estate." He continued reading. "After accounting for these advances, the remaining liquid assets shall be divided with 60% allocated to Amanda Watson and 40% to Heather Watson Parker, with the following conditions." Heather's face had progressed from pale to ashen. "Conditions?" "Yes," Mr. Harrison confirmed. "Heather's portion shall be held in trust, distributed in annual installments over 10 years, contingent upon completion of a financial management course and the establishment of college funds for Emma and Jackson Parker." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Not only was Heather's inheritance significantly reduced by the accounting of past gifts, but she wouldn't even control what remained. Her dream of an immediate windfall had evaporated. "This is ridiculous." Gregory exploded, his carefully cultivated professional demeanor cracking. "We have current financial obligations based on anticipated inheritance, contractual commitments. This arrangement is completely unacceptable." Mr. Harrison remained unperturbed. "Your financial decisions were made without guaranteed knowledge of inheritance terms, Mr. Parker. That's not the responsibility of the deceased." "My parents wouldn't do this to me," Heather insisted, voice rising. "They always supported my needs. This must be Amanda's influence." She turned to me, eyes blazing. "What did you say to them? How did you manipulate them into this?" "I knew nothing about their will," I said truthfully. "This is as much a surprise to me as it is to you." "Liar." She was nearly shouting now. "You've always been jealous of me, always played the martyr. You turned them against me." Mr. Harrison intervened. "Mrs. Parker, I can personally attest that these decisions were made solely by your parents after extensive consideration. Amanda had no involvement in their estate planning." He withdrew an envelope from the portfolio. "Your parents anticipated your reaction and left this letter to be read at this time." He unfolded the pages and began reading in my father's unmistakable, straightforward style. Heather and Amanda, if this letter is being read, we are no longer with you, and for that we are deeply sorry. We hope you know how profoundly we loved you both, each in your unique way. Heather, since your childhood, we have tried to give you everything you wanted, believing it would bring you happiness and security. We now recognize that in doing so, we failed you as parents. By consistently fulfilling your financial demands without accountability, we enabled patterns that have prevented you from experiencing the satisfaction of earning your own success and living within your means. The provisions in our will are not punishment, but an attempt, however belated, to help you develop financial responsibility. The detailed accounting of funds previously provided is not meant to embarrass, but to clarify. Each time we offered financial assistance, we explained it as an advance against inheritance, with documentation you signed. Perhaps you chose not to remember these terms. Amanda, your self-sufficiency and responsibility with money has not gone unnoticed. We are proud of the values you embody and the thoughtful choices you've made. We entrust you with executor duties knowing you will be fair and compassionate, even when difficult decisions are required. Our greatest wish is that both our daughters find genuine happiness and reconciliation with each other. Money has been a source of conflict in our family for too long. Perhaps in our absence, you can find a healthier relationship with both finances and each other. With eternal love, Mom and Dad. The letter hung in the air between us. Heather's face had crumpled, whether from genuine emotion or thwarted expectations, I couldn't tell. This is contestable, Gregory declared, gathering the papers roughly. We'll be speaking with our attorney immediately. This won't stand. Mr. Harrison nodded calmly. You have every right to legal counsel, though I should inform you that the will includes a no-contest clause. Any legal challenge, if unsuccessful, would result in complete disinheritance. Gregory faltered visibly. As a financial advisor, he understood the implications. Furthermore, Mr. Harrison continued, I have video documentation of Thomas and Catherine explaining their decisions of sound mind, specifically to address any claims of undue influence. Heather stood abruptly, chair scraping against hardwood. This isn't over, Amanda. Not by a long shot. She gathered her designer purse with trembling hands. You won't get away with this. As they stormed out, slamming the heavy door behind them, Mr. Harrison turned to me with sympathetic eyes. Your parents anticipated this reaction. They struggled with these decisions for years, Ms. Watson. They truly believed this was best for both their daughters in the long run. I nodded, still processing everything I'd heard. The revelation of my parents' careful documentation, their recognition of how they'd enabled Heather, their awareness of our differing approaches to money, it painted a picture of parents far more perceptive than I'd realized. Did they know how she would react? I asked quietly. They hoped for better, he admitted. But they prepared for this outcome. The question now is how you wish to proceed as executor. I looked down at the copy of their letter, recognizing my mother's handwriting in the margins, small notes added to my father's typed words. Their final act of parenting had been an attempt to correct course, to help Heather grow even in their absence. I'll honor their wishes, I said finally. Exactly as they intended. What I didn't yet understand was how severely Heather would fight to overturn them, or what it would cost us both. The storm broke within hours of the will reading. My phone exploded with notifications, text messages from Heather ranging from tearful pleas to vicious accusations, voicemails from Gregory outlining legal consequences, and confused inquiries from extended family members who'd received Heather's version of events. According to her rapidly spreading narrative, I had manipulated our elderly, vulnerable parents into changing their will on their deathbeds, cheating her out of her rightful inheritance while pretending to be the perfect daughter. The story was absurd to anyone who knew our parents' sharp mental faculties or the timing of their will update 6 months prior, but Heather had always been convincing when playing victim. You need to hear what she's telling people, Jenna warned during our coffee meetup the following day. She's saying you secretly resented her lifestyle and engineered this whole trust arrangement out of jealousy. I stared into my untouched latte. How do I fight something so completely false? With truth, Jenna replied. And by remembering who your parents were and what they wanted. Family members began taking sides. Mom's sister, Aunt Evelyn, called to offer unwavering support. Catherine told me about their estate plans last Christmas, she revealed. She was worried about Heather's reaction, but felt it was necessary. They weren't manipulated, Amanda. This was their careful decision after years of concern. Others weren't so supportive. Dad's brother, Uncle Robert, who had always favored Heather, left a scathing message questioning my character. Cousins I'd been close with stopped responding to messages. The family was fracturing exactly as my parents had hoped to prevent. The texts from Heather grew increasingly desperate as the financial reality of her situation sank in. We put a deposit on a lake house last month. We'll lose everything if you don't release funds immediately. Emma's private school tuition is due. Are you going to make your niece suffer? Gregory says we might have to declare bankruptcy. Is that what you want? To destroy your sister's family. Each message twisted the knife, testing my resolve to honor my parents' wishes. In moments of weakness, I considered giving in, transferring funds outside the trust structure just to end the conflict. But Mr. Harrison's steady counsel kept me grounded. Your parents anticipated this pressure, he reminded me during our weekly calls. They created these provisions after watching this pattern repeat for years. Breaking their trust now won't help Heather in the long run. 3 weeks after the funeral, I finally gathered the courage to visit my parents' house, now technically owned by the family trust. Using my key, I stepped into the silent home, memories assaulting me from every corner. Dad's reading chair still held the impression of his body. Mom's gardening calendar hung in the kitchen, appointments noted in her precise handwriting stretching into a future she wouldn't see. I was sorting through mail that had accumulated when I heard a car door slam outside. Through the window, I watched Heather march up the walkway, determination in every step. I opened the door before she could use her key. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, as though I were the intruder. "Going through mail, checking on things," I answered calmly. The executor responsibilities. She pushed past me into the foyer. I came for Mom's jewelry and the silver. Family heirlooms should come to the eldest daughter. The will specified most of Mom's jewelry goes to you, I acknowledged. But it needs to be properly inventoried first. Mr. Harrison is arranging for an appraiser next week. I don't need an appraiser to claim what's mine. She headed purposefully toward our parents' bedroom. I followed, anxiety mounting. "Heather, please." There's a process to follow. She was already pulling open Mom's jewelry box, fingers closing around the pearl necklace Dad had given Mom on their 25th anniversary. "I'm taking what should have been mine already." "The pearls were specifically left to me," I said, recalling the bequest listing. "Mom knew how much I admired them." "Of course she left you the most valuable pieces," Heather snapped, but hesitated, pearls dangling from her fingers. "That's not true. You're getting her diamond earrings and the sapphire pendant from grandmother." The will was fair, Heather. Something in my tone must have reached her. She replaced the pearls, but grabbed a handful of other items, stuffing them into her purse. "I'm taking these. Try and stop me." As she pushed past me, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Several small figurines from Mom's collectible set were missing from the hallway shelf. They had been there during the funeral reception. "Have you been taking things from the house?" I asked. Her momentary flash of guilt confirmed my suspicion. "You have no right to inventory my movements," she deflected. "This was my parents' home too." After she left, I did a thorough check of the house, discovering numerous missing items. Dad's vintage watch collection, Mom's first edition books, the sterling silver service. A sick feeling settled in my stomach as I called Mr. Harrison. His recommendation was immediate: change the locks and install security cameras. Document everything missing, he advised. "We may need this if the matter escalates legally." The following day, I received an email from Gregory's attorney formally contesting the will on grounds of undue influence and mental incapacity. Despite Mr. Harrison's warnings about the no contest clause, they were proceeding with legal action. While gathering documents for our legal defense, I discovered a hidden folder in Dad's home office desk. Inside was a series of credit card statements in my parents' names with charges they couldn't have made, luxury purchases in stores they never frequented, during times I knew they were elsewhere. Attached was a private investigator's report confirming that Heather had somehow obtained credit cards in their names and charged over $45,000 without their knowledge. Also in the folder was an unsent letter from Dad to Heather, dated just 3 weeks before the accident. "Heather, we've received documentation of credit cards opened in our names without our authorization. We know you are responsible. This betrayal of trust cuts deeply. We've spent years supporting your lifestyle while watching you make increasingly reckless financial decisions. This stops now. We've consulted our attorney about necessary legal steps, but are giving you one opportunity to explain your actions before proceeding." Dad. My hands trembled as I realized what this meant. My parents had discovered Heather's deception and were preparing to confront her just before they died. The trust provisions weren't just about teaching responsibility. They were protecting assets from someone they could no longer trust. When I shared these discoveries with Mr. Harrison, his normally composed expression faltered. "This strengthens our position against the will contest," he noted. "But I'm deeply sorry for this additional pain. Would you like to use this information in court?" The question weighed heavily. Using the evidence would likely ensure Heather's legal challenge failed, but it would also permanently destroy any hope of reconciliation. Exposing her fraud publicly seemed like a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "Let's hold it in reserve," I decided. "I'll try speaking with her one more time." I arranged to meet Heather at a neutral coffee shop, away from lawyers and family tensions. She arrived looking uncharacteristically disheveled, designer sunglasses hiding what appeared to be reddened eyes. "I can't keep doing this," I said after we'd ordered. "The legal fees alone will drain the estate. No one wins." "You could end this today," she countered. "Just agree to overturn the trust provisions." I took a deep breath. "I found Dad's folder, Heather. I know about the credit cards." Her cup froze halfway to her lips. For once, her composure completely failed her. "They knew," she whispered. I nodded. "They were planning to confront you before the accident. It's why they updated their will with the trust provisions." She set down her cup with a shaking hand. "You don't understand. We were underwater financially. Gregory's investments failed. We were losing the house. I was desperate. You could have asked them directly for help. After everything they'd already done? They were starting to say no more often. I couldn't risk it." Her voice cracked. "What are you going to do with this information?" The question hung between us, the first genuine moment we'd shared in years. "That depends on you," I answered carefully. "If you drop the legal challenge and work within the trust provisions, no one else needs to know. You can take the financial management course, set up the kids' college funds, and rebuild. But if you continue fighting this, I'll have no choice but to submit everything as evidence." Our eyes met across the table, two sisters at a crossroads, the legacy of our parents hanging in the balance. "I need time to think," she finally said. As she left, I wondered if I'd made the right choice offering this olive branch. What I didn't know then was that Heather's situation was even more desperate than she'd admitted, and that Gregory had plans of his own that would change everything. The courthouse steps gleamed in the morning sun as I climbed them, Mr. Harrison beside me, his reassuring presence steadying my nerves. 6 weeks of legal maneuvering had led to this moment, a formal hearing to address Heather's contest of our parents' will. Despite my olive branch, despite the evidence I'd shared privately, she had chosen to proceed. "Remember," Mr. Harrison murmured, "Judge Blackwell has a reputation for seeing through emotional manipulation. Stick to facts." Inside the imposing courtroom, Heather and Gregory sat with their attorney, a sharp-featured woman whose reputation for aggressive tactics preceded her. Heather wore a conservative black dress that screamed grieving daughter, her hair pulled back in a modest style unlike her usual glamorous appearance. The calculation behind the image made my stomach turn. As proceedings began, their attorney wove a compelling narrative about a vulnerable eldest daughter being undermined by her jealous sister, who had allegedly isolated their aging parents and poisoned them against their beloved Heather. The performance was masterful, twisting facts, emphasizing Heather's role as a mother whose children would suffer, portraying me as single and financially secure with simple needs compared to her client's greater financial responsibilities. When my turn came, Mr. Harrison presented a methodical, evidence-based case. He submitted the video testimony of my parents explaining their decisions of sound mind, documentation of the repeated financial assistance to Heather over the years, and statements from their doctor confirming their excellent mental capacity at the time the will was updated. Your Honor, he concluded, this is not a case of undue influence, but rather of parents making a difficult decision to finally establish financial boundaries with their adult daughter after years of supporting increasingly unsustainable demands. Throughout our presentation, I noticed Gregory growing increasingly agitated, whispering tensely with their attorney, shooting glances at his watch. His behavior seemed odd even under the stressful circumstances. Judge Blackwell, a silver-haired woman with piercing eyes, asked pointed questions of both sides. Her focus on specific dates and documentation suggested she wasn't swayed by emotional appeals. Mrs. Parker, she addressed Heather directly. Your parents' video testimony specifically mentions their concerns about your financial management. They reference discussions with you about the advanced nature of previous gifts. Do you deny these conversations occurred? Heather squirmed visibly. They may have mentioned terms, but it was understood these were gifts. They wanted to help me maintain our family's lifestyle. Yet here are 14 separate documents with your signature acknowledging these as advances against inheritance, the judge noted, reviewing the exhibits. Your own signature appears below clauses explicitly stating these terms. The questioning continued relentlessly, exposing contradictions in Heather's testimony. As the judge called a short recess to review final documents, Gregory abruptly stood and left the courtroom, phone pressed to his ear. He didn't return. When proceedings resumed, the judge delivered her ruling with clear conviction. Having reviewed all evidence presented, I find no basis for claims of undue influence or diminished capacity. Thomas and Catherine Watson's will reflects their carefully considered intentions, documented consistently over time with proper legal guidance. The contest is denied. She looked directly at Heather. Furthermore, as the will contains a valid no-contest clause triggered by this challenge, I must enforce its provisions. Mrs. Parker's inheritance rights are hereby revoked per Section 5, Paragraph 3 of the document. The color drained from Heather's face as she grasped the implications. By pursuing the contest despite warnings, she had triggered the clause that eliminated even the trust provisions. She would receive nothing beyond specific personal items designated in the will. Your Honor, her attorney began, but the judge silenced her with a raised hand. My ruling is final. Court adjourned. In the hallway outside, Heather collapsed onto a bench, staring blankly at the wall. Her attorney departed with a cold, "I'll bill you for my services," leaving her alone. I approached cautiously, unsure what to say after such a devastating outcome. I tried to warn you about the no contest clause, I said softly. Gregory's gone, she whispered, so quietly I almost missed it. What do you mean gone? She looked up, eyes hollow. He emptied our joint accounts this morning. Texted during recess that he's filing for divorce. Said without the inheritance, there's no point continuing a failed investment. A bitter laugh escaped her. Apparently, I was just another investment opportunity that didn't pay off. The cruelty of his timing, abandoning her at her lowest moment, stunned me into silence. The house is underwater. The cars are leased with payments we can't afford. The kids' private school tuition is due next week. Her voice had a detached quality that worried me more than anger would have. I have nothing, Amanda. Less than nothing. Despite everything, seeing my sister so utterly broken triggered a protective instinct I thought had died years ago. This wasn't the calculated Heather who had cornered me at the funeral or the manipulative Heather of the courtroom. This was someone confronting the collapse of her entire life structure. "Where are Emma and Jackson now?" I asked. "With my neighbor." I couldn't bear for them to see this. A single tear tracked down her cheek. How will I tell them their father left? That we'll lose our home? That they'll have to change schools? I sat beside her on the hard bench, maintaining a small distance that represented years of broken trust. "You don't have to figure everything out today," I said finally. "One step at a time." Later that evening, after driving Heather home to her children, I returned to my apartment and found a package that had been delivered during the hearing. Inside was a sealed envelope with Mom's handwriting, addressed to me with instructions to be delivered after all legal matters are resolved. With trembling fingers, I broke the seal. "My dearest Amanda, if you're reading this, the difficult path we chose has reached its conclusion. Your father and I agonized over our decisions, knowing they might lead to permanent division between you and Heather. That was never our intent. We love both our daughters equally but differently. Heather has struggled with insecurities your entire lives, constantly seeking external validation through possessions and status. Our greatest regret is enabling this pattern until it became her identity. We hope the legal provisions have established necessary boundaries, but we fear they alone cannot heal the deeper wounds. This is why we're entrusting you with our most important legacy, the possibility of reconciliation. In the family trust is a provision allowing the executor discretionary authority over distribution of assets if circumstances dramatically change. This letter grants you permission to exercise that discretion without betraying our intentions. Kindness isn't always giving people what they want, but sometimes it means offering a new beginning when they're ready to walk a different path. Whatever you decide, know that we trust your judgment and love you immeasurably. Forever with you. Mom. I read the letter 3 times, tears blurring the familiar handwriting. Even from beyond, my parents were trying to teach both their daughters about responsibility, consequences, and the possibility of redemption. The decision now rested with me. The legal battle was over, but the real challenge, healing our family, was just beginning. 6 months after the courthouse confrontation, I stood in my parents' garden, now technically my garden, watching autumn leaves dance across freshly turned soil. I'd moved into the family home 3 months prior, finding unexpected comfort in its familiar creaks and memories. The garden had become my therapy, the process of nurturing new growth helping me process grief and change. So much had happened since that devastating day when Heather lost everything. Gregory's abandonment had been absolute. He'd relocated to another state with his young assistant, leaving minimal child support and a mountain of joint debt. The divorce proceedings revealed financial deceptions he'd hidden even from Heather, investments made with borrowed money, credit lines maxed out on speculative ventures. Heather and the children had moved into a small apartment after their house was foreclosed. Emma and Jackson transferred to public school, a transition that proved surprisingly positive as both found activities and friends that engaged them more authentically than their exclusive private programs had. Most significantly, Heather had taken a job as an administrative assistant at a local nonprofit, her first real employment in years. The humbling experience of answering phones and managing someone else's schedule had initially been traumatic for her, but gradually evolved into something resembling pride in genuine contribution. Our relationship remained fragile. Tentative conversations focused primarily on the children's needs rather than our painful history. Small steps. Necessary distance. After much reflection and consultation with Mr. Harrison, I had made a decision about my parents' final legacy. Using the discretionary provision they'd outlined, I established educational trusts for Emma and Jackson that would fully fund their college educations when the time came. These were structured to be untouchable by either parent, a gift directly from their grandparents to their future. For Heather, I created a matching fund for legitimate living expenses. For every dollar she earned through employment, the trust would match it up to a reasonable limit. Not a handout, but a hand-up that honored her efforts toward independence. When I presented these modifications, Heather's reaction wasn't what I expected. Rather than relief or gratitude, she seemed almost uncomfortable with the generosity. "Why would you do this after everything?" she asked, voice small. "I try to take everything from you." "I'm not doing it for you," I answered honestly. "I'm honoring what Mom and Dad ultimately wanted, to help you build a sustainable life, not enable dependency, and to ensure your children have opportunities regardless of adult decisions." The scholarship fund I established in my parents' names had become my own passion project. Aimed at supporting first-generation college students from our community, it embodied their belief in education and opportunity. The first 5 Thomas and Catherine Watson scholars would begin their studies next fall. The letter arrived on an ordinary Tuesday, slipped under my door while I was at school teaching. Heather's handwriting on the envelope made my heart skip. Our communications had been primarily through brief texts and necessary phone calls about practical matters. I waited until evening to open it, pouring a glass of Mom's favorite wine as liquid courage. "Amanda, I've started and discarded this letter a dozen times, unable to find words adequate for what needs saying. I'm sorry feels insulting in its insufficiency. How do you apologize for years of entitlement, manipulation, and cruelty? For trying to take what wasn't mine? For betraying not just you, but the parents who tried so hard to love us both well?" The painful truth I'm finally facing is that I've spent my entire adult life trying to fill an emptiness with external validation, bigger houses, luxury brands, status symbols. Nothing was ever enough because the void wasn't material. I see that now, watching Emma find joy in her community theater program that costs almost nothing, seeing Jackson flourish in his science club. My therapist, yes, I finally started therapy, says naming our rock-bottom moments is important. Mine was sitting in that courtroom realizing I'd gambled everything on a man who saw me as an investment vehicle and lost a sister who, despite everything, still showed compassion. I don't expect or deserve forgiveness. But I want you to know I'm working to become someone different. Someone who might one day be worthy of being your sister again. The matching fund provision you created feels like more generosity than I merit, but I promise to use it as intended, as a bridge to genuine self-sufficiency, not a crutch. I'm enrolling in accounting courses at the community college this spring. Turns out I have an aptitude for numbers when they're not just measures of status. Emma and Jackson ask about you. They miss their aunt. Whenever you might be ready, they would love to see you. No pressure, no timeline. With regret for the past and hope for something better. Heather. The letter wasn't a magical solution to years of damage. Trust, once shattered, doesn't reassemble without visible cracks. But it was something I hadn't dared hope for, a genuine acknowledgement and the first tentative step toward something new. 2 weeks later, I invited Emma and Jackson for Saturday afternoon baking in their grandparents' kitchen. Heather dropped them off but didn't assume she was included, another small sign of newfound respect for boundaries. I surprised myself by asking if she wanted to stay. Her cautious smile as she tied on Mom's old apron felt like a tiny wound beginning to heal. My parents had been wiser than I understood. Their will wasn't just about money or possessions. It was their final attempt to address the unhealthy patterns threatening to define their daughter's relationship forever. The inheritance that truly mattered wasn't in bank accounts or property deeds, but in the values they hoped we'd eventually embrace. As I watched the sunset from my parents' porch, our family porch with its generations of memories, I realized that the journey of healing has only begun. The road ahead will have setbacks and old patterns may resurface. But for the first time, I feel hope that my sister and I might someday find our way back to those little girls who built blanket forts and created secret languages. What about you? Have you ever experienced family conflict over inheritance or money? Do you believe financial betrayals can be forgiven? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing and sharing with others who might find comfort in knowing family healing is possible even after profound betrayal. Thank you for witnessing this journey with me, and may your own family stories find their way to healing whatever challenges you face.